Yo, what's going on guys? Dr. Schwartz here. Welcome back to another Gears 5 video. Today I'm going to be doing a skill card tier list ranking for all of the tank classes in Escape. So that'll be the Anchor, the Brawler, the Gunner, the Pilot, and the Veteran. Feel free to comment below if you have any comments, suggestions for future videos, or comments about this video, like if you think a card deserves to go higher or lower, let me know. This is just all for discussion, so just trying to keep the game alive. There's going to be timestamps coming up on the screen in a second here, I'll have timestamps for all the classes, so if you want to fast forward to a certain class, feel free to do that. It'll be in the description as well. So yeah, let's get started here. The Anchor and Escape, I'm just going to go in alphabetical order. Cards at the bottom here, I'm going to rank them excellent all the way to do not use. Adrenaline Junkie is increased damage and venom. I probably put that in above average. Throughout the game's history, the Anchor has had some buffs and nerfs, but this is still one of the cards that are key to the Anchor's versatility and Escape. Increased damage and venom, so it counts as venom and venom ash. It's definitely a good card to run. Barrier Battery, I'd say it's above average too. Increases the barrier duration by 60%, so it just increases your ultimate. I believe it's already 15 seconds in Escape, so an extra 60% is pretty nice. Barrier Boost is, I'd say it's average, just because it's really situational depending on the hive. Whether you want a larger barrier or not, really just depends. Really a personal preference. Not a card I'd run in a rotation all the time, but I could see a reason where you would use this card, or a hive, or a particular setup where you would use this. Barrier Feedback I think is excellent. Pretty much almost always have it in most Anchor builds in Escape. Kills extend barrier by 3 seconds, so anytime you get a kill during your barrier ultimate is available, or up, it extends the duration of it, so that's a really useful card. And considering that the Anchor gets the ultimate back so fast, having it for longer than its normal use is really nice. Bloody Shot is pretty much mandatory. You spawn with a Bolt Hawk, so getting active Pistol Bleed is pretty much your primary source of damage for the class, so you definitely want to run Bloody Shot. Bolt Hawk Bandolier, it really just depends on the hive. Above average is where I'd put it, just because some hives have ammo starvation, some don't, and if you're running a tactician, you may not need it, so it's really just depending on what's available to you. If you're doing a solo run, this is higher priority. If you're running with a team, you really don't need it. Just have a class like a Infiltrator or something. Still a great card though. Bullet Chain I'd probably put at the top. So this increases headshot damage. Each headshot damage gives you extra damage for 15 seconds, so once you get 4 kills, you get max damage out of this for a brief period of time. And the good thing about this is it's not just Bolt Hawk, it can be any precision rifle. So this is a really good card. You can run it like a sniper build if you want to run that. It makes the Bolt Hawk pairing with Bloody Shot really, really nice. In Escape, Crazy Tough is more important than I would say it would be in Horde. In Escape, there's mutators that enemies can freeze you, shock you, ghost, double poison, so having extra health from the get-go is really nice. Dodge, I'd say, is below average. Resistance to marksman weapons, far too situational of a card. 32% again is way too low. You're likely going to get one shot down to anyway. Harness Energy is excellent. Each barrier hit gives 4 stim to the team. That is extremely clutch. Helps keep you alive and your teammates alive. The best thing about this card is anytime a barrier hits it, it gives you and your teammates stim, and the range does not matter, which is really nice. Heads Up, I think, is just no. If you need to put on a card that makes you take the no damage from friendly fire, and then you have bad teammates. Moving on, In Your Face, like, again, another card that I think is not useful in any way. I don't think any of the taunt cards are that great. It's an okay beginner card if you don't have the other cards unlocked, but otherwise, once you unlock the other cards at the top here, I wouldn't recommend running it. Lethal Barrier, I'd say, is below average. It is a fun card to run every now and then. It does increase your melee barrier damage. That's counted as melee damage, so it does make your barrier stronger, and you can kill enemies this way. The only time I really run it is on the detour when I'm farming for Juby or leech kills using the Barrier's ultimate. Let the Jubies and Leeches run into it on the detour to farm escape kills, but other than that, for a master level function, it's below average. Venom Recharge is average. This kills in the Venom Recharge ultimate by 35 seconds. I think it's... if you really want your ultimate like 5 or 6 times in the Hive match, feel free to run it. But the Anchor already has like a 150-second ult charge, so this is just making it come back even quicker. So, certainly a solid card to run. And then Venom Resistance is average as well. It used to be, I'd say, above average or even excellent at one point, but they nerfed the card, so it's only 32% resistance. I used to think it used to be 50 or 60, so it's still really nice. 32% resistance cards are even better once you pair it with like Crazy Tough or Dodge or something. But yeah, that's my tier list for the Anchor. So the excellent cards and the above average cards are pretty much what's in my rotation. Anything that's average is very situational, and then below average don't use or just cards I would never really run in Escape other than trying to be fun or trying to mess around with the class a little bit. And we're going to move on to the next class. Alrighty guys, this is the skill card tier list for the Brawler in Escape, so let's get started here. Skill cards in alphabetical order, A through Z, so I'm just going to start from the beginning. All the glory is a must-have in Escape, that is burning damage, burning enemies explode on kill. The only disadvantage to this card is that the explosive damage does injure your teammates, brings them down to like 1 HP, so just be on the lookout for that. In terms of DPS, this is definitely a must-have though. Burn and recharge, I don't really think it's useful at all in really any situation. 6% faster ult charge on a burning enemy, that's way too low for it to make any substantial difference. If you really want to get your ultimate back fast enough, just do as much damage as you can. This increases the ult charge based on the damage you're doing, but it's just, the burn damage is so low in the game anyway. I just don't see a reason to justify running it. Burn boost, it's below average. Again, this card is kind of confusing because you have to get an active reload. Once you melee kill a burning enemy by torch tackling it, you get an active reload with the gun that you're holding, and you do an extra damage with it. So it's like a hybrid card between the tackle build and the burn rifle build. If you're running cards like that in Escape, you could run this card, but it's not something I'd run in my rotation. Again, way too specific of a scenario of a card that you would need just to make it useful. That's why I don't warrant really using it. Damage Dash is excellent. Definitely one of the go-to damage resistance cards. 60% resistance. I'm sorry, 40% resistance while sprinting is really nice. You're always going to be running and tackle smashing everything, so getting that resistance is great. And the way you know you have this card on is if you're running, you will see sparks coming out of your character's body. So that's a cool way to know if you're running it or not, or if a brawler is running it or not. Defensive tackle is effectively useless just because 60% stim on tackle kill. The class already gets stim on a tackle kill, so I don't think this card does much of anything. It says it adds more stim. It doesn't seem like it does from the testing that I've done, so I just think this is a filler card they added in the game and then forgot that it was there because I don't think it does anything. Fuel tanks is carry 120% Scorcher ammo. I think the Scorcher is underwhelming in Horde, so in Escape it's really underwhelming. Also, there's only 2 highs with it, the Warren and the Detour. So a card that you can only use in 2 highs is not a card I think worth running, so I wouldn't run it. Glow and Slow, it's okay. 60% speed reduction on burning enemies, so if you're burning Scions or something, it slows them down. Some of the larger enemies it works too, but I don't think it's as effective as something like stunning an enemy with a flashbang or something. So it's okay, but there are stronger cards for sure. Haymaker, solid beginner card. I think you unlock it at a very low level. This just relies on the slow melee punch, doing more damage with that and stunning drones. Solid beginner card, but in terms of Master Escape, it's not one of the top cards. Inner Fire is excellent. This gives you 30 to 35% resistance to damage when your ultimate's available. Pair this with Damage Dash and some other resistance cards, and you were pretty much near invulnerable to going down once you're running. Killing time, I'd say it's above average. This extends the train's ultimate. Every kill that you get during the ultimate. The only thing I would recommend here is you do have to take off a card of your main cards to run this. So normally I would take off Inner Fire to run Killing Time. There are certain highs where this is useful, like there's a Crazy Juvie section on the Warren, and that's where I used this card. One thing I want to mention about Killing Time is that it extends the ultimate on the kills that you get from the tackle kills only. Explosive kills do not add time. It's just tackle kills from the initial tackle during the ultimate. So just be on the lookout for that. Perk up is excellent. Again, any card that gives you extra health and regen and escape is a must-have, so that kind of goes without saying. Play with fire, average, far too situational, requires you to have another weapon. Any card that requires you to have another weapon and escape is a card that's not in the top 2 tiers, so solid. If you get a Lancer or a Retro or something, you can do burn damage. Like the long-range Brawler, like the rifle ranged Brawler in escape, it's solid, but there's just really not a lot of situations where you're going to benefit from it just because of the weapon availability. Pyromaniac, okay, it's solid. Again, if you run Play with Fire, you'd probably run this card too. Increases the burn damage. It's solid, but the burn damage is so weak that the 100% is really that great unless you're running a fully ranged build. But in escape, that's not really the meta. Scorcher Mastery, it's extra Scorcher damage, like I mentioned before. Scorcher is only available on the Warren and the Detour, so it's only available on 2 out of 31 maps. Not a card you want to run. Soothing Warmth, I think, is below average. It sounds great on paper, 275% health regen, you're burning enemies, but the fact you have to be super close to them, and I don't think the health regen and resistance is good enough or quick enough to warrant running, so I find it a disappointing card in my opinion. Steam Engine, below average, extra burn radius during the ultimate. It's nice to have, but again, even setting enemies on fire will damage them, but it won't damage them enough to warrant running this card. You're just more likely to just run and spam B on whatever enemies in your way instead of having a larger burn radius. Thrashball Pro, I'd say it's above average. Less damage from melee attacks are very clutch on hives like Melee Brawl or hives with extra melee damage being dealt to you. The Warren, it's really nice. If you run Thrashball Pro with a bunch of other cards, damage distance cards, once you're running, you won't get down from melee, so which is cool. But definitely a great card. You can sponge quite a bit from melee attacks. And in escape, you're going to be so close to everything anyway, so it's definitely a great card. Torch Tackle, above average too. Just tackle burns and deals damage to surrounding enemies. I should probably put it at the top, why not? Tackle burns and deals damage to burning enemies. So running this with all the glory. Damage dash, Inner Fire perk up, that's pretty much the starting 5. This is pretty much your damage dealing card for this class, so you'd almost pretty much want to run it in escape. That's pretty much the tier list for the Brawler. So excellent cards are pretty much the starting 5. The above average and average cards are rotational cards, and then the rest are just cards that have no functionality in escape or are just far too weak or far too obsolete to be useful here. We're going to move on to the next class here. Alrighty guys, this is the tier list ranking for the Gunner class in Escape, so let's get started here. Skill cards at the bottom, and we're just going to go in alphabetical order as usual, and let's get started. Bait Armor I think is excellent. Any card that gives you damage resistance that increases your damage resistance every hit you take, that is really nice. It takes you 6 hits to get up to 60% resistance, so once you get that, you are pretty tanky, so that's really nice to run. Blast Shield, I'd say it's below average, far too situational of a card. Could be useful on certain hives where once you pair it with other cards, but 32% explosive resistance, even for you and your nearby allies, is too little. Likely going to go down from a boom shot or a salvo. Or salvo or drop shot explosive anyway, within that range. Concussive Explosives, I would say, is a must-have. 3.2 second stun with enemies within 15 meters. So the stun build for the Gunner is really nice, especially on highs where there is a salvo or something like that, a explosive weapon. You can take advantage of it there. Flash Freeze, I really wouldn't recommend it. It's this cool card, a 200% faster freeze, but cryo cannon is limited on so many escape hives that I really wouldn't pursue running this card. Freeze resist is average. Very useful damage resistance card in hives where there's freezing enemies, so you can run that card. Pairing it with other damage resistance cards, you can be pretty tanky. Grace period below average gives you immunity on revival, which is nice, but if you're getting mowed down by a Scion or something, that kind of neutralizes the effect of this card. Still solid though, does give you a period of time to run away from fire and not die, so it has its uses. Grub Magnet I wouldn't use. The taunting cards in this game are just so underwhelming that I don't think it's worth using. I've used it at one point, and I've headshotted enemies during situations, and they would not shoot at me, so it's not worth running. Heavy capacity is a must-have, so if there are heavy weapons available, you get extra ammo, 43 salvos, 301 tri-shots, 550-something Molcher bullets, 215 cryo, 64 buzzkill, something like that. Pretty nice. Heavy charger, I'd say it's above average. Heavy hits reduce ultimate cooldown in multiples of 0.014 seconds. On highs with longer recharge, you definitely want to run this. The gunner gets his ultimate back pretty quickly, but if you're running a Molcher or a salvo build and you're consecutively hitting enemies with rockets or bullets, you will get a little bit more ult duration back with consecutive hits, so that's really nice to run. Heavy deflect, again a damage resistance card. That's 32%. It's a way too low, and you're likely gonna get one shot down anyway unless you pair it with something else. Heavy shell, average, good in certain hives. If you're running a solo run, it's really good for reflecting projectiles, boom shots, drop shots, salvos, things like that. However, in a lot of hives, you are probably fine with just the regular ultimate, but this is still a cool card to run in certain situations. Molcher mastery, below average. Molchers are not available on a lot of maps. Either you get a Molcher from an ammo room, or you get a Molcher from a Molcher Scion, and the fact that, like in Escape, if there is a weapon-specific card, it is probably lower priority than some others. Phoenix armor is okay, gives you stim on reviving from DB&O. It's solid. I would much rather have like health regen or something. It's only a card I've used once or twice. It can be fine in Escape. Practice every day I wouldn't use. It just gives you faster reload during your ultimate. A lot of situations in your ultimate, you're either firing a torque bow or you're not firing anything at all, so you really don't need this card. You need Reflect Shredder though. On Master Escape, in a lot of situations you're going to need it to bleed out Scions, bleed out pretty much anything that is shooting at you, so this is really nice. A must-have in my opinion. A Serrated Edge is above average. A lot of hives do have elite hunters or torque bolts available, so if there is a torque bolt available, run this hive. I do have a spreadsheet that shows you what weapons are available in each hive. Probably gonna link that in the description or something if you guys want to check that out. It's something I made a while ago. Soul Survivor, wouldn't use it unless you're running a solo run. If you're running with Escape multiple people, then this card does nothing. So it's tank synergy, again, requires a pilot to be near a gunner, and they have to be within 10 meters, and it's only 30% resistance. Sorry, just not a good enough card. Team Resist is excellent. Gives you 6%, 95% resistance for the 6-second ultimate duration. So if you need to run past a certain room, or you're getting overrun, you can use the ultimate and you get some immunity for that duration. I'd say ultimate battery is above average, especially on hives where there's longer recharge. You can have like if you coordinate with teammates well, you can have like a Juby or something, or a drone down the gunner over and over again to recharge the ultimate of somebody that may need it later on. So that's kind of why I have it up there. Yeah, that's pretty much the tier list ranking for the gunner. Pretty much, you want to run cards that are self-sufficient without too many weapons, but a lot, of course, this is a heavy weapon class, so without heavy weapons, there's not a lot you can do, but the ultimate itself is pretty awesome. So yeah, that's pretty much the tier list ranking. I'm going to move on to the next class. Alrighty guys, this is the skill card tier list ranking for the pilot and escape. Aggressive armor is excellent. Any card that gives you stim when you deal damage is really nice. Goes without saying, you do any damage, you grant stim, so really good. You just have to be at full health to activate this, so just keep that in mind. Bleeding Mulcher, it is a pretty good card. I put above average, gives you 55% bleeding damage for the Mulcher. Equip it to your Silverback, definitely one of the 3 best weapons for the class. So the class's ultimate recharge is pretty slow, but once you have the ultimate available, this is definitely a card that can save your run. Cold Finish, probably the top card for the class. Freezes an enemy for 70% damage once it's down to like 25% health, so you can finish off a lot of Scions, enemies like that, very easily. When enemies are frozen, you do 3 times damage dealt to them, so that's really nice for you and your teammates. Deep Pockets wouldn't use. Increased pistol capacity is a beginner card. Don't really need it. In Escape, if you're playing the pilot, you want more of the health cards and the drop shot card and things like that. Enforcer Expert, I wouldn't really use it. There's not a lot of enforcers available in Escape, and if there are, you are better off running some other cards. Exploding Buzzkill, probably one of the weaker weapons on the Silverback. It just isn't there DPS wise, so it's a solid beginner card, but other than that, once you unlock the other stuff, I would ditch it. Explosive Munitions is below average. In Escape, you want to avoid being in defense mode just so you can loot the Silverback more, but the slash damage from like the salvo is pretty nice if you're running Silverback salvo, but other than that, it's solid. Healing Explosives, I would say, is above average or excellent. Any card that can heal you for explosive damage dealt is really nice. Get a drop shot or a frag or an explosive weapon, and you can heal for the damage that you deal, which is nice. Keeps you alive. Healing Munitions, so this is when you're in defense mode, you heal for the damage that you deal. This is really nice. Although I think Healing Explosives trumps this card and also works on the Silverback, so it kind of makes this card a little obsolete, I believe, but it's solid. Kind of feel like it doesn't need. That's just TC trying to add more cards. If this card can do what this card does, then do you need this card? By itself, though, it's fine. Healing Tri-Shot, above average. I like the Mulcher Tri-Shot combo. The Tri-Shot Salvo combo is pretty nice, too, so this just heals your Silverback once it's damaged, so it's really nice. Initiator, like I mentioned before, any of the taunting cards are effectively useless, so just don't run them other than if you have to run it for a map, because you don't have the cards maxed, but other than that, once you unlock the other cards, I would ditch it. Quick Ice Cannon, again, one of the weaker escape cards, or cards for the class in general. It doesn't freeze fast enough, it doesn't fire far enough, it's just doesn't get the job quite done. Rear Armor, I would say it's above average. Not a lot of situations where you're going to be getting shot from behind, but the great thing about this card is it does give you damage resistance in the Venom. Since the Venom is behind you, I believe that also counts as taking damage from behind, so you get resistance from behind too. Meaning that you can sponge in the Venom Cloud and the Venom Ash longer, which is really nice. So, above average. Silverback Salvo. This card, I think, is probably the strongest weapon on the Silverback. So it doesn't like do extra Silverback damage or salvo damage. All it does is extra hits give you ultimate duration, so you have the Silverback for longer. A lot of situations I'll be running salvo and tri-shot build with the stim build and the cold finish, but pretty much the salvo is a must-have for the Silverback in my opinion. You don't get the ultimate that much in Escape because the old recharge time is like 400 seconds, I think, for the class. So, but once you have it, having a card that extends it is really nice. Silverback Scorcher. Scorcher's only available. Well, the Scorcher is on the Silverback, and for a while it was glitched, um, where it would just shoot the ground. But again, far too low damage, and doesn't fire far enough for it to be useful. So, just a disappointing card in general. Wingman is average. Ultimate recharges when there's 2 or less alive. So if one of your teammates dies, you can get your Silverback ultimate quicker. This used to be called Sister to the End, where it would work. The card was the same. It's just that it worked all the time, but now it only works when there's two or more teammates, 2 or less teammates alive. So if one of you dies prior to the door closing, this could be useful in helping you get your ultimate back for like a big fight at the end of the hive. And the hammer is above average. The reason why it's not excellent is just because a weapon dependent card. It's just hard for me to put that there, just because not every hive has a drop shot, and not every hive has a drop shot scion. But once you do have it, this is a great card to run. 4 seconds stun time and 80% extra damage is really nice. So yeah, the pilot and Escape, there's really just like the top 7 or 8 cards. A lot of cards that I wouldn't really recommend using just because they're far too weak or just not useful enough. So yeah, that's the tier list ranking for the pilot. We're going to move on to the next class. Alrighty guys, this is the skill card tier list ranking for the veteran in Escape. So alphabetical order, Band of Brothers is excellent. Your ultimate gives you stim regen, 150 HP stim per second. You're always going to want that. Keeps any card that gives you extra stim or survivability is a must-have, especially in Escape. Brutal efficiency, I'd say it's above average in Horde. I don't use it at all because you can get your ultimate quick enough. But in Escape, you start with no ultimate, so any card that helps you get the ultimate back as quick as possible is nice. I think it takes like 6 or 7 executions to get it back. And the good thing is your passive gives you immunity once you have executions, once you're doing an execution. So great card to run. Doesn't require a weapon, but obviously it's easier if you do have one. Custom Lancer, pretty much a go-to DPS card. A lot of hives have some version of a Lancer or a Retro or a GL. The GL is the most rare, but the Lancer and the Retro are more common, so running that card is really nice. Again, it's just hive specific, so if a hive doesn't have a Lancer, run something else. If it does, feel free to run it. Defensive stim, say it's below average. The stim capacity is increased by 110%, so you do need Band of Brothers to give you the stim, but the thing is that you have to take no damage for like 40 seconds or 30 or 40 seconds to get full stim on top of your regular stim with this card. Not a lot of situations where you're not going to be taking damage for that long, so I don't warrant running it. Dug in, I'd say it's above average. Actually, let me put it at the top. 60% less damage in cover is unbelievable. You can sponge so much with that. Just find a good cover to use, and you can go to town with your ultimate and take less damage. You can sponge quite a bit. Boom Shot, Salvo, Rocket, especially with the other cards running as well. Explosive resistance, far too specific of a card. 32% resistance is far too little. Solid beginner card, but other than that, not useful. Extended rifle magazine, I wouldn't recommend running it. It gives you a larger magazine size, but when you're running your ultimate anyway, you're not going to reload, so there's really no benefit to having a larger magazine size. So, and it doesn't like give you more ammo for your weapon or anything, so other than that, I don't really use it. Flankum's average, 150% extra damage when flanking. If you have teammates sort of pulling aggro and you're able to shoot bosses or enemies from behind, this can be really nice, but very situational though. Really good DPS card, but the fact that you do have to be in a certain situation to use it makes me put it sort of right in the middle. You're going to need focus. That increases your ult duration from 20 seconds to 40. So you got the aimbot on for longer. Be more effective that way. Friendlier fire. It's cool to have a longer, larger living legend radius, but in this scape, you're more than likely going to be using the ultimate with just you, or maybe with a marksman. So you really don't need like a super large radius. So I don't really justify running it. Headshot master, I'd say is above average. I don't want to put too many cards up there. 60% extra critical damage works with your Lancer, works with any rifle, any long shot. So you can be useful there as a semi-sniper. So really nice. Lancer stock reduces the Lancer recoil, but other than the retro Lancer, the recoil for the Lancer is pretty manageable. But you could run it if you feel like handling the recoil can be difficult for you. Last ditch, 90% resistance, 90% increased damage on low health. It is a solid DPS card with the fact you have to be like under 25% health or something. You have to be pretty hurt to use it. In a lot of situations, if you're in cover and you're running all the other damage resistance cards, you are likely not going to be that hurt that often. So it's a solid card to run, but I think the class has better cards to run at the top. That's pretty much the tier list for the veteran class. So the top 5 or 6 cards in the excellent and above average, and then the rest of the cards you rotate out, and then the cards I wouldn't use at the bottom here. Yeah, that is the tier list ranking for the veteran in Escape. Thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel. Feel free to comment below if you have any disagreements or agreements or comments about where I rank the cards or whatever. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel. Peace out. See ya.